Hello everybody, welcome to session 4 of the Yellow Wallpaper. I'm not going to talk as long as I did in session 3, which when I downloaded the video it was over half an hour long. I'm so sorry. It's because I haven't done one of these for a while and I was all excited. I'm terribly sorry. So we're just going to whiz through an analysis of a character, and we're going to focus on John. And most specifically, we're going to focus on how he speaks to the narrator. Now, I do include a link later where you can read some analysis about how he's described by our narrator. But that I'm going to leave for you to do. This is just a taster session, a taster course, isn't it? So I'm not going to do everything. And you're probably fed up of hearing my voice. And so we are just going to focus on how he speaks to the narrator. Now, what I've done here on this slide is I have collated everything he says, basically, to our narrator, direct speech-wise. So obviously it's in order that it won't make sense if you read it top to bottom, because it doesn't actually appear together all the time in the text. You can see he doesn't actually say a lot to her when you think about his 22 pages long or whatever it is. And what I've done is I've highlighted in 3 different colours, like a rusty colour, a green and a purple, the 3 techniques or 3 things I've noticed that he does or that he uses. So what I'm going to ask you to do is pause me in a moment and go through this speech, paying particular attention to those highlighted bits, although obviously you can look at the other sections as well, and just think, what do these utterances tell us about his character, about how he feels about his wife, the way he treats her, that sort of thing. So pause me now and do that. Welcome back, everybody. You might be able to hear, I'm recording 3 and 4 on the same day, so you might be able to hear that I've got a bit of a cold. Oh, I don't know if it's hay fever. Anyway, so we can see that if we look at the orange colour, I'll just talk about the colours. Little girl, darling, dear, dear, bless her little heart. She shall be as sick as she pleases, dear, dear, my darling. He sounds extremely patronising for his wife, little girl. And because this is in order, when he calls her little girl, that's towards the beginning of the text. I just think, oh my God, if she's being patronised like that all the time, no wonder she goes mad. Darling and dear in isolation could be, terms of endearment, but are they really when we know what he is doing to his wife? So we need to think about that, and also, do they become almost sickly to read? And then this middle section here, where he talks to her in the third person. So I had to think then what person it was. First person is I, second person is you, third person is them, she and he. So rather than using the second person saying, bless your little heart, you will be as sick as you please, he says, bless her little heart, she shall be as sick as she pleases. I just think, what is he playing at there? What? Ooh, and have a little think about that. Why has he done that? Why is he removing the narrator from her own story? I think you can apply some feminist literary theory reading to that. But my question to you is, why is he removing her from her narrative there? And if we think of the content of that second section, even, she shall be as sick as she pleases, or even if he's saying, you will be as sick as you please, he's suggesting that she's choosing to be sick. We'll read that as you want. That's scratching is Polly Banks trying to get into the door. I'm just going to let her in. If you can hear that, sorry. Okay. And then my darling. Again, in isolation, that is quite nice, a term of endearment, but it's gone from darling, dear, 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 my darling. He said, I beg of you. Is he putting, or is CPG making John use that possessive pronoun my at this stage? This is the last thing he really says to her, to exert his authority over her and to remind her. And so that we could be looking at there. Now in green, I cannot possibly leave town just now. Let's improve the shining hours by going to sleep and talk about it in the morning. And for my sake, for our child's sake, as well as for your own. Now, I've highlighted those bits because those bits make it seem as if her illness is an inconvenience. And what do we do with inconvenient things? We shut them away, we ignore them. And it seems as though CPG is suggesting that rather than really treating mental illness, what happened was the sufferers were shut away because they were inconvenient. And if we look at this final, this green one right down the bottom paragraph here, for my sake and for our child's sake, as well as for your own. Now, if we look at the syntax of this, syntax, syntax, syntax means grammar, sentence structure, the order of words in a sentence. We've just had a delivery, forgive me, my partner might come in the room now. Oh, sorry, I'll just continue. I don't want to stop and do this again. So if we look at the syntax of this sentence, for my sake and for our own child's sake, as well as for your own, if we consider the syntax of that, we can say that he has foregrounded himself. He has put himself at the start there, hasn't he? It's him first, then the child, then the woman suffering with mental health issues. And we need to think about that. Sorry that was disturbed and everybody, I said syntax about 1,000 times then, because my little deliveries have arrived. And then finally, in purple, you really are better. You are gaining flesh and colour. Your appetite is better. I feel much easier about you. You are better. Can you not trust me as a physician when I tell you so? If we look at those, it's that sort of almost, he is, isn't he? He's ignoring her concerns and repeating, you are better. You are getting better. You will get better. Trust me, you will get better. Without really considering appropriate treatment, we could argue, couldn't we? So those are my musings on what John says to the narrator. Now, we have, and we will do a whole session on this. The last session will be on this. We have a narrator, a first person narrator. How do we know that this is exactly what he said? I'll leave that one with you and we'll talk about it in a couple of sessions time. We've got 2 more sessions after this. So I've put a link down there for you to be able to look at, as I said, the other side of things there. But I'm just going to think about John. Is he the main character of this piece? We would automatically consider the narrator the main character. But is actually John the main character? He says the most. But that's because the narrator's not going to talk to herself, is she? She talks to us. And do we automatically, as readers, assume the narrator is the main character because they narrate for us and thus control our view of the narrative? An interesting one. Also an interesting one to think about if and when you read The Great Gatsby, which at the moment Year 13 do for coursework. If you haven't read it already, I suggest you read it. It's only 9 chapters long. It won't take you long. It's fantastic. But that's told from a point of view of Nick Carraway, a narrator. We always consider Gatsby to be the main character because he's the eponymous, he's the title character. But is Nick the main character as the narrator? I don't know. Or is it, who knows? Anyway, is he a villain? Is he really a villain? If we think about text as having a protagonist and an antagonist, a main character, a hero, if you like, and a villain, is the narrator the protagonist and John the antagonist? Many would argue yes. And you think about that yourself. However, the treatment he is giving his wife is based on Weir Mitchell's rescuer. So my question is, was he just trying his best based on the science at the time? And we'll learn more about that next session. He is the all-encompassing authority. He is not only her husband, but her doctor. So that sort of dual role that he's got makes him all the more powerful. He's extremely patronizing, as I've said. He calls her little goose, and he says, "Oh, your fancies, as if she's imagining things." He does have a dry and clinical rationality, because he's a doctor. He's like I said, very clinical and rational and very practical. So he is the exact opposite of his wife, who is extremely imaginative. He is completely unsuited to understand her. And many readers argue that he knows her only very superficially. He sees the outer pattern, but this is the trapped, struggling woman inside. If we look at that wallpaper as a metaphor again, he doesn't really know his wife. He doesn't know that she's passionate and that she's creative. Or, if we argue against it, does he know all of these things? And does he sort of aim to hinder those elements of her? He does treat her as a case, or a wife, and not as a person. And we can look, and you can look into a lot there of sort of relationships in the 19th century between men and women and husbands and wives. They're not the same as or as open even as relationships would be now. I'm reading a book at the moment called The Terror by Dan Simmons, and although it's written, it's a modern book, it's set in the 1840s, and in it, that one of the main characters in his 60s, he says that he doesn't know his wife, and forgive me for being a bit rude here, but he's never seen her body. He's never seen her body, even though they've been married a number of years and they've had children. He's never seen her body without her clothes on. And I think, we need to think about, he doesn't know his wife. John doesn't know his wife, but that was almost normal. And on the flip side of that, at the end, she doesn't recognize him either. She doesn't say John. She says that man. So that is her descent into madness means that she's unable to recognize her husband, or she doesn't recognize the man he's become. These are things for you to think about. And just as an extension to this session, then obviously you can go back and think about these bullet points that I put up. Like I said, pause this whenever you want to consider, and we'll go back and use the PowerPoints. I've put this whole PowerPoint on in the document section of this work, if you like. But your extension is, can you link your understanding of John's character to feminist literary theory? Have a think about that, and I'll leave that one with you to think about. So that is us looking at John. And that is the end of session 4. Now, what we'll do in the next session is look at Charlotte Perkins Gilman's motivation for writing the yellow wallpaper, because she does actually write a piece in a newspaper called Why I Wrote the Yellow Wallpaper. So she does actually explain it completely. So we'll have a little look at that. Then the 6th session then is looking at the unreliable first-person narrator, which is very, very short. We'll end that one there. And I'll see you soon.